Please welcome our next speaker and Microsoft MVP, Chris Huntingford. Today, he'll be showcasing his session, 10 Key Things to Do to Get Your Organization Ready for Power Platform Adoption. Please stick around after Chris's session for a live Q&A.
Yo, yo, yo. What is up, everyone? I hope you're all good. And a big shout out to the folks from DynamicsCon. Thank you so very much for having us. This is extremely exciting. I'm very happy to be here once again. I've done a few of these. And actually, I feel like this one's getting just more bigger. I love the theme. I love all the work that's been done on making these presentations look amazing. So congratulations to everyone, and thank you so very much for having me once again. So this time we are going to be talking about a couple of pretty scary things. Now, I know that I'll be catching some of you on the chat, so thank you very much. If you are in the chat, just say hi, and I'll do my level best to respond to you while I'm running the session, if that's cool. But today, we're going to be talking around 10 things to do to get your organization ready for Power Platform. Now, this is extremely exciting because this could go very, very well or very, very badly, depending on the demos. So yeah, hopefully everything is all good. Also, just to let you know, I'm in the UK and it's evening over here. So if I do get visited by a small, demanding child, I apologize. Okay. So shall we get going? I'm very excited about this. First things first, just a quick intro. My name is Chris. I'm a Microsoft MVP and fast track recognized architect. So effectively what I get to do is run around the world telling people about Power Platform and AI and all that type of stuff. And it's extremely exciting. Anyway, hi to everyone in the chat, right? Thank you very much. I know that there's a slight delay. So when we do the session, you may see some stuff that's coming out. There is a interactive part of the session. So yeah, hopefully you'll have a bit of fun there. Anyway, if you want to hook up on LinkedIn and Twitter, please do so, or X as the kids are calling it these days. So yeah, let's have some fun. Right. I quite love this slide. And the reason I love this is because a lot of people think that your organization is going to be plagued with power apps at some point, and that power apps will absolutely destroy everything. And that's a little scary, right? And a lot of folks are like, oh no, we're going to open up power apps in our organization, and that's really going to ruin the world for us. And actually, you know what? It's not, right? Like, it's not going to actually make very much of a difference. I actually think that if you turn power apps on, as long as you've got the right info, you will be able to manage your estate really clearly. Sorry, a child has decided to play drums while I'm talking. Anyway, so a couple of things I hear all the time is that the power platform is going to put our business at risk and expose everything. Yeah, not necessarily. I mean, quite honestly, Excel's already exposing loads of stuff. SharePoint's already exposing lots of stuff. There's lots of things happening in your organization already, so I wouldn't be too panicky about that. But what I want to do is I want to just take a little bit of a backtrack and look what exactly the Power Platform is, right? Because I think we get confused, and I think that a lot of folks don't really understand the in-depth pieces of it. So I'm going to break it down and give you a bit more information. Hopefully this will make a bit more sense. All right, so you should have seen this slide a million times before if you've been in the Power Platform track, which is extremely funny because I figured I'll just chuck it over once again. But I want to give you a little bit of a different explanation, right? And hopefully this will make sense. The Power Platform is actually divided into two layers. And the two layers are effectively what we call your interaction layer. And I'm going to get into trouble for saying a bunch of the stuff here. And I know this is recorded, so it's going to be great when somebody rewatches this. Your interaction layers typically consist of things like Power BI, which I've renamed to Yellow Excel because that's hilarious. I was actually around when Power BI was released after Excel Power Tools were around, and that was great fun. So Yellow Excel, yes, that's a thing. Then you have Power Apps, which is effectively stolen from Dynamics or pried out of the cold, dry hands of the Dynamics people. And also Windows applications, so a tool called Project Sienna. And this has been around since around 2016, 2015, actually. Then you got Power Automate or Logic Apps for Simpletons. And that's really just around being able to process automation inside your tools and across your platform and allow people to interact with these tools in a more sit dev or business maker type fashion. You've got the artist formerly known as Power Virtual Agent, which is now intelligent co-pilots, obviously using intelligent automation and that type of thing to drive these conversational user experiences. And then finally, external websites, which we're calling, I don't know, I think it's Power Pages this week. I'm not so sure. Anyway, that's effectively a Power App that's exposed to your external team or external people. And that is, folks, your interaction layer. It's the way you interact with data. All right. Now, the most important layer, I believe, is your data layer, which is at the bottom. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to read through all of these, but you've got tools like your data connectors, which give you the ability to connect up to other data structures. They're kind of like a wrapped API. So think about an API that's been wrapped in Christmas paper. That's what this is, right? So it just makes it easier for you to get access to that data. AI builder, yep, we stole that from Azure. We shamelessly did. Then you've got the green ceiling fan or the cabbage called Dataverse. And Dataverse is a magnificent mechanism to store data and manage that data in a more sort of robust, refined way. And then finally, Power Effects and managed environments, right? Now, what I want to make here is actually your data connectors are the key thing, right? The place and the mechanism in which you store data is extremely, extremely important. And what I would say is that when you start thinking about how that works, I always kind of think about the fact that I look at the data first. And the data to me is the most important thing in the platform. Data is king and queen of the platform every time. And for me, that is the part that matters the most because it is the thing that affects your organization the most. So I want to talk about just thinking about how to secure your ecosystem and manage your ecosystem, right? And what I like to kind of frame this is that when looking at a digital ecosystem, a lot of things, a lot of things that kind of work within your digital ecosystem, you need to be protecting that, right? And one of the most important things to me is making sure that your data is looked after. Okay, so I always think that if Power Platform is going to be the thing that exposes all the data in your ecosystem, okay, you have a much bigger problem than apps and flows. I think apps and flows are probably the least of your concerns. Actually, the biggest concern you should have is something much wider than that, and is that that's actually the way in which your data is stored and managed. Okay. Now that scares me to death because if you think that apps, simple little canvas apps and automations are going to cause havoc in your ecosystem and that's the only problem, you are very wrong, my friends. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to chuck a link to a form in the chat. Okay. And I'm hoping this will actually work. I would like to trial something with you. Right. And my trial is going to be how many weird things can we do with Power Automate? How many weird things can we do with data? So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and collect these responses, shorten the URL, copy link. Hopefully this lets me paste it. Nope, it does not let me paste it. All right, we'll have to use the QR code a little later. But it's important that we're going to go and test this data out, right? I'm going to show you what actually happens with data breaches at a later point. Sorry, I can't stick the URL in the chat. There must be a blocker on here. Right, so let's move swiftly on. So let's take a look at the things that we can focus on to protect the ecosystem. Let's take a look at things that we know will help us protect our digital ecosystem. Well, when you're implementing Power Platform, there's a bit of a journey that you go through. And the first journey is a lot of the time people have built a number of things or a number of tools in their portfolio, right? So typically when we go and turn on the platform, we may find things that have been created that people don't necessarily know about. Okay. So as an example, if I take a look at my demo accounts over here and I'll take a look at my environments, a very simple thing is if I go ahead and go to my default environments and I go and take a look at the applications in my default environments over here, you'll be able to see that I have a list of apps that have been built. So I can actually see what's going on already, right? Like somebody's created an F1 vehicle inventory, which is pretty cool. It's probably my friend Craig. Anyway, so I can actually go ahead and see what's being created. And I always have this rule that says absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, right? So just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. Okay. So normally you'll have a bunch of things that have been built. Then what will typically happen is somebody like me will come in and say, you know what? This is not the greatest thing I've ever seen. What we should do is put in some guardrails. All right. So let's go ahead and kind of lock down the platform. So at your start level, what you're going to want to do is put in a little bit of structure over there and say, you know what, we're going to put in some guardrails, we're going to put in some data policies and some firewalls and some, ninjas and pit bulls and whatever you want, right? But to make sure this platform is looked after really well. And as you structure, you'll notice that there's a kind of increase, there'll be a dip in your solutions that are created because of the fact that you have those guardrails. But you only really need to do those once and maintain them, right? And you'll see an increase in the number of solutions that you're building in your digital ecosystem. Then when you start going, you'll start seeing things like the people. So the people building solutions may increase more and more. right? So the more guardrails you have and the more opportunity you have for people to build and the safer space you create for people, the more likely it is they are going to be building things. And then finally, your processes, right? And your processes typically don't take effect until your structure stage. So when you're structuring out your platform, you want to get things like, I don't know, automatic environment creation, et cetera, et cetera. You're going to go ahead and build those in your structure phase. Now, whenever I talk to organizations, I ask them three questions, and you all can do the same thing. The first question I say is, what are people building? All right. So I'm like, hey, what are people creating with the platform? Now, if you had to ask yourself this question in your business about Excel, like what are people making in Excel? Do you think you'd be able to answer that question? All right. Do you think you'd be able to track all of the data exfiltration in your company? The second thing is where? Where are people building? So we have people from all over the world on these calls. And one example I will give you is that if you're in Germany, you shouldn't be letting private information cross the German border because that's actually not okay. And it works the same in some other countries, right? So where are people creating these things? Are they creating them in the space that's actually localized to your country? And then finally, who is creating? So as an example, I want to know if Bob from accounts or Bob from or Tanya from customer service is building things. Okay. And this is important because if I know what people are building, where they're building, who is building it, I have a much better opportunity to go and track what's going on in my Power Platform estate. Okay. Now, somebody said to me on Twitter the other day I don't know, one of the social media tools, they said, "Oh, we need to know why people are building." Well, my question to them was, why are people building Excel documents? Like, can you answer me that question, please? And they said to spreadsheet. I'm like, okay, cool. So they're spreadsheeting. Can you tell me every single Excel document that's built? And their answer was no. And I was deeply sad because, people are still asking me that in Power Platform. And actually, what's the point, right? Because if my estate is kept really clean, it doesn't matter why people are building. What's important is that they're creating stuff that's useful to them. Okay. So really important, if you get some clever person that decides to ask you that question, just simply ask them the same one back about Office and email. Like, why do people send emails? Okay. So pretty important, right? I think we should probably get a little more nerdy, if that's okay. But first, I want to kind of caveat this whole thing, right? And the thing I want to caveat it with is this: um, no one can know everything about the Power Platform. I feel like there are a lot of people out there that are like, oh, okay, we've been through the ringer, we know all of this stuff, but no one can know everything. And they see my 6-year-old who was just in here, who quite literally said to me the other day, "Daddy, I know everything." You can't know everything, okay? And if you also have a job opening for a 6-year-old, you should tell me because the dude apparently is the brightest child in the world because he knows everything. Right. So what we do is we take all the learnings and we put them into this digital ecosystem and make sure that we understand how to kind of grow the platform as we go. Okay. And we're consistently doing that. Now, a couple of things that I would like to go through is the top 10 things right now to help you secure your ecosystem. And I'm going to do this in the form of slides and demos. Okay, and I'm going to do some pretty creepy stuff as well. All right. Now, because of the delay in the session, I'm going to have to leave a slide up for a little bit so you can see it. Then I'll do the demo, and hopefully some of you have given this a go. Right. So first things first, I want to talk about tenant-wide data policies. These are probably the most important things you can implement in your platform right up front. And the reason I say that is because if you do not implement these, you will have problems. Okay. And I really mean big problems. So I want to wheel back a little bit and talk about a couple of things, right? Let's go and check out the most important thing in the Power Platform. And that most important thing is called a connector. So I'm going to go and bring up my demo over here and drag it across. And if you go to our favorite URL, which is make.powerapps.com, you can see that you have this ability to build out connections. So in my center of excellence environment, I've got a whole bunch of connections, including Twitter. All right, I've broken it already. You can see that. But I got a whole bunch of connections that are being created. And I can go and create more and more and more of these as I go. Now, what's scary is that there's a ton of these, all right? There's around close to 1,500. So if I go ahead and search for Dropbox over there, you can see I can go and connect up to the Dropbox, and I can quite easily move documentation and things like that directly into Dropbox through this connector. All right. Same thing with things like Google. So Google Sheets. Oops. I can go ahead and actually connect up to Google Sheets. Oh, new connection. That's my bad. When I learned how to spell Google, remember that time that I couldn't spell Google? Yep. I can go ahead and connect up to Google Sheets. And these are the connectors that are available in the platform. Now, here's something else important. You have a thing in your platform called the default environment. And unless you physically block through proxy make.powerapps.com, every single person in your organization, whether or not they have a Power Apps license, has access to the default environment. Okay. So what's pretty important is that every single person can use these connectors. Okay. Pretty key. Some of them are premium. They have to have a paid for license. But yeah, if they've got an Office license, they can use most of these connectors in the default environment that cannot ever be turned off. All right. So please bear that in mind. Anyway, so let's go ahead and take a bit more of a look, right? Um, let's go ahead and take a bit more of a look. So what I want to do is I want to go and take a look at the admin center. And the admin center allows me to manage these data policies. All right, so you can see data policies over there. And data policies, if I go new, I'm not going to create a brand new one and break everything because I'll explain why. There we go, test data policy. Great. If I hit next, right, these are the number of connectors we have. So we've got 1,324. Okay, so if I go ahead and I actually take a look at these, there are some connectors that are actually not blockable, which is crazy. And what's pretty interesting is that these connectors cannot be blocked in your environment, right? And unfortunately, what that also means is that anyone can use these depending on the license that they have. Okay, so you have 1,324 connectors in your environment, some of which cannot be blocked. Now, I will go back and quickly just take a look at this. Look at the number of environments I have in my organization. All right. This basically means that these people that have access to these environments can pretty much use any connector they want. So let's go ahead. I'm just going to do another test and give you another quick peek. Again, all of these connectors, right? Just take a look at them. There's a load. Look at that. There's Twitter. So I can go into my default environment, build an automation, should I have the right license, and connect it up to Twitter. Okay. And that's really, really, really important. I can also do the same with Google. So if I've got a Gmail account, I can do the exact same thing. This exists out the box. My favorite connector, being the Chuck Norris connector built by my friend Daniel Laskowitz. If you take a look at that, this also means that you can use Chuck Norris jokes in your environment. Yes, I don't know how useful it would be to you. I just find it really funny. What's also good is that actually all connectors are linked up to documentation. So if you hit the About button, you can go ahead and check out what this connector is about, like all the actions and triggers and things. This is typically what your security team will review when going through information security and getting the connector approved. All right. So now we've done that. We're all happy about connectors. They exist on the platform. They're effectively wrapped up APIs. Now, the tenant-wide data policy, what that does is it allows you to block a bunch of these connectors, the ones that are blockable. So I have a rule. Okay. Every connector in the world is guilty until proven innocent. So every connector that is built in my estate and ecosystem is guilty until proven innocent. It has to go through InfoSec. It has to be reviewed. All right. And let me give you an example. One of the organizations I was working with overseas at one point, sort of Germany, Switzerland, around there, they had a bunch of automations that were sending and receiving information from various other parts of the world. And one of the connectors actually used to send information over to the States for review, like kind of, it was just how it worked. It used to route the information via America and then back through. Okay. Now, what I found really interesting is that they hadn't seen that in the documentation. And because this was in Germany, what happened was that actually you can't do that, right? So they had to turn that flow off. So it's important to review the connectors that you have in your estates and ecosystem. So what I did is I thought, okay, well, how do I mitigate this? How do I make sure that people behave themselves? So I created a tenant-wide data policy, and I'm going to show you one that I'll build now, and we'll turn it on together and break everything. But the tenant-wide data policy, what it did is that it catered for any environment in my ecosystem, all right? So it caught any rogue environment that was built. But I do want to tell you something. Something bad can happen if you don't think about this and do this properly and do a proper connection review. And let me give you a quick peek. When you go ahead and you implement this process, right? So what you'll do is you'll edit it, you'll create it. I call this business blocked. So I'll go select all the connectors that are blockable. I'll select apply. I'll pick them up and I'll block them. Okay, so 1,300 connectors. What I will also do is anytime Microsoft adds a new connector, I will say it is blocked as well. Now, the reason I do that is because if somebody creates a random custom connector to some dodgy website, not that one, but if somebody creates a connector to some dodgy website and it somehow gets through the Microsoft approval process, it will automatically be blocked. So remember, setting your default group to blocked is extremely important. All right. What I'll also do is then I'll go through these piece by piece. And I'll say, all right, the Power Platform ones I'm actually okay with. So we'll go ahead and keep those. We'll move those to business. And you can go that and do that with the rest of your connectors. What I'll also do is go through the business connectors and see what I would like to be in business and not business. As an example, I do not want any automations for SharePoint and Dataverse to be built together. So what this will do is this will block those two connectors from being used in the same automation or app. It's extremely useful. So you can split those out. The second thing I'll do, ignoring custom connectors for now, is I will add all environments. This is a global DLP block. Pause. If you implement this and if you have any automations that are running with these connectors, those automations will stop and fail. It is called the scream test. All right. And the scream test is, oh no, you've just shut down a ton of automations. You're going to get a ton of support tickets. My personal record is over 1,000. I hope you do not beat that. But it's pretty important, right? Because if you go ahead and block connectors, your flows will fail. Okay. Please remember that your automations will fail. So if I block this Google connector, this flow will turn off. So if you have mission critical flows in your ecosystem, all right, and you go ahead and do a tenant-wide DLP and you block everything, those mission critical flows are going to fail. Yeah. So I hope that makes sense to you. All right. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to turn it off. We'll turn it off together later. We'll leave this little bad boy over here. I'll show you what happens when we block everything shortly. Okay. So the second most useful thing I can tell you is a thing called tenant isolation. This is crazy, and I'm going to actually do a data breach demo very shortly. But tenant isolation is a real way to stop people moving data across tenancies. So as an example, if I've got tenant A, which is like my regular work tenants, and tenant B, which is a demo tenant, out the box, tenant isolation is turned off. So I can move data with Power Automate between those two tenancies. Okay. Which is crazy, but it's pretty important, right? So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to make sure that that tenant isolation is turned off. And it's really easy to do. Okay, you simply go to your tenant policies, tenant isolation, and just turn it on. So you're going to want to turn tenant isolation on, not off. That's my bad. So extremely important. Practical demo. I won't do this now, but there we go. Tenant isolation. You'll pop in there and you'll go and turn it on. I'm not going to do it because I'm actually going to show you a live data breach. Okay. So remember, global DLP and tenant isolation, those will get you good scores and get your environment relatively secure as well, which is pretty important. All right. So the next thing we're going to take a look at, which is one of my personal favorites, is a bit of a demo. I'm going to leave this slide up because of the delay, but I'd love for you, if you have a moment, to go and capture some information in here. All right. Now, this is going to be quite fun because I'm going to actually show you what happens to private information on data breach. Okay. Now, what's important is that if you start picking this up in your ecosystem, this is actually a live thing that I'm going to show you. You'll start seeing some pretty crazy stuff. Okay. So hopefully you're all going to be able to scan this, and I'm going to go into the demo and give you a quick peek. Are you ready? Because this is going to be a little intense. So that form that I have right there, okay, exists in a different environment. So let's go ahead and get that environment up. Right. That form exists in this tenant. So you can see there's me. This is one of my tenants that I use. And this exists in a totally separate tenant. So that's me over there. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and fill in this form. If you use your actual email address, by the way, you will get an email from me. And don't worry, it's not going to be displayed. So I'm going to go Chris, and I'll put a crazy surname, the awesome. Also, I can't spell, so I welcome judgment. Oopsie, I can't say H. All right, and my random free text is otters are evil. Otters are evil mammals. They really are, right? They're actually the creepiest creatures in the world. And I'm going to go ahead and submit that. Okay, now let's go back to the slides and hopefully you'll get this again. What this is actually going to do is I'm going to do two data breaches with this information. Okay, and what's pretty important actually is that you're going to see this happen live, and I'm going to show you the flows and how I did it. Okay, so first things first, if I go back to that environment over there, you can see I've got an automation. And if I click demo data, you're probably thinking, well, there's nothing super impressive about this automation, right? Like what is actually happening? Wow, you guys are rocking. What is actually happening? There's not a whole lot of impressive things about this automation. I'm going to drill in and show you what's impressive about this automation. And you're going to be thinking it's less impressive when I pop it open. So first things first, let's take a look, right? You can see that there are 4 steps. So somebody filled in the form. All right. I got the response details from that form. Okay. And all I did was I populated a SharePoint list and I sent this lovely person an email. The point I want to make here actually is, where is the SharePoint list that I populated? It's not in this tenant. The SharePoint list doesn't exist in this tenant. So if I go ahead and actually edit this flow, you're going to see something pretty wild. All right. And I do not have tenant isolation turned on in this scenario. It's normally turned on. Where it says create item, you can actually see that I'm logged into a separate tenant right over there. I'm not using the local information. I'm connecting this to another SharePoint list. Oh, okay, cool. Well, plot thickens, right? What does that actually mean? Well, it means that what I've done is I've gone and collected a ton of your private information, right? And that's pretty wild because that now all exists in this tenant right now. So I'm pretty excited, and thank you very much for giving me all of your data. Let's give it a little bit of a refresh. It might take some time. Thank you for giving me all of your data. I'm extremely excited about that. But actually, let's go and do something a little more creepy, right? Now that I've gotten this information, there could have been something else that happened. And this is something else that actually went on in the background. There's another Power Automate, and what this Power Automate does is it actually picks up all of your data and shifts it from another tenant into a Google Sheet that's completely outside of my organization. So you're probably thinking, man, what is this guy doing? This is actually me showing a data breach. So there we go. So all I've done in this flow is I've said, right, what we're going to do is you're going to go ahead and you're going to give me your data. So I'm going to wait for an item to be created. I'm going to insert a row into a Google Sheet using my non-corporate credentials. And I'm also going to post it to another tenant. What on earth is wrong with this guy? Like, just posting into all these separate tenants, and here it is there. I'm using my personal tenants. Okay. So actually, I've done 3 data breaches in this whole thing. So if you don't believe me, let's make sure I'm speaking the absolute truth. Here's your information. Thank you so very much. You've just done that. Here's the time. You can see it over there. Julia, Carl, you guys rock. This is a proper, oh, Bilbo Baggins, my goodness. Never laugh at dragons. I do like sea otters. I don't like sea otters. I don't even feel bad. Hi from Toronto. What's up, Julia? So thank you for giving me that data. And what's also happened is that that data breach has directly landed up in my my personal team site when I eventually get it open. Give me a sec. I do have a diagram that this explains this, by the way. Don't you worry. I just have a million tabs that are open right now. Cool. Right, so let's get it open. Teams. Alrighty. So let's go to the personal team side. Hopefully nothing sketchy comes up. Nope. There we go. General, what I like sea otters, never laugh at dragons, decon event, snakes not my friends. So I've actually done 3 data breaches. Wow, there's a lot of them. Fab, I love you guys. Thank you. All right. So what did I actually do there? Let's just backtrack, right? Because that's super sketchy what I just did. So what actually just happened? Okay. So I'm going to walk you through it. This is without the DLP. So what actually just happened was, number one, I created a flow that got you to give me information directly within a form that I shared into a SharePoint list. Okay. What I also did from there is I populated a Google Sheet outside of my tenant, and I posted into a Teams chat into another tenant. So I've actually breached data 3 times cross tenancies. Okay. And that is a very, very simple thing to mitigate. So just 1 second, need to log in. So what I've started to find actually is that what people don't know is they don't actually know the difference between DLP and data loss prevention in Purview and DLP in the Power Platform, right? And they're 2 separate things. If you're using data loss prevention in tools like Purview, it does not obey the same rules as the data loss prevention in the Power Platform. There are 2 separate things. So you must actually go directly into the Power Platform Admin Center, which I'll bring up very shortly over there. Okay. You must go into the Power Platform Admin Center and you must create your data policies here. All right. Do you guys want to see that thing break? So do you guys want to check it out? Do you want to see if it breaks? Let's see it. We're going to break automations. All right. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and break some automations. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to show you how to create it. We're going to create everything that is blockable, apply. We're going to pick it all and we're going to say in classic Chris fashion, block the whole lot, right? We don't want anything to be okay. We want to make a blocked group for everything. Cool. I'm one of those mean admins. I actually don't even feel bad. So let's move out to the scope. I'm going to add a environment, and I'm only going to pick the one that I used. So this environment is the COE environment, which is a bit sketchy. Or is it? No, it's not. The environment that I built this flow in, okay, is going to be one of the primaries. So I'll just go ahead and add that over there. So it's called the feature trial environment. So we'll make sure we select the right one. Feature trial, cool. Okay. Why are we not adding? Oh, there we go. Add a policy, cool. Next, and create policy, right? So that's created a data loss prevention policy. If I go back to this automation and I simply click back, what you'll actually find after a few minutes is that Google Add to Google Drive will eventually turn off, okay? So that entire flow will shut itself down and it will not allow people to actually run it, which is terrifying, okay? And that's purely because of the fact that it's got a connector to Google Sheets in it. So just give it a few minutes. I might come back to it depending on if this one cooperates or not. It does take a couple. There we go, turn it off, right? And if I go and look at the add to Google Drive, all right, let's pop it open. Give it a sec. And if I go to edit, there we are. It's restricted by the data loss prevention policy. So that is how you protect yourselves and make sure that nothing bad happens. Okay. So those are the two extremely important parts that I wanted to show you. Now that's the nerdy stuff done. Let's go and do a little bit more. Let's go do a little bit more fun things. All right. Whoops. So next on the scene, we are going to take a look at our, sorry, I'm just trying to get my slide back up. Apologies, guys. Okay, next on the scene, we're going to go and take a look at our COE starter kit. Now, this is pretty important, right? Because the COE starter kit is extremely key when building out these tools and solutions. There we go. The COE starter kit is really important when building out these solutions. Okay. So what I've started to think is that a lot of people think that the kit solves all of the problems in your ecosystem, but it really doesn't. It's important for you to think about the fact that actually this is a great way to begin and it provides visibility. So I like the starter kit because it really gets me going. And in every single implementation I've done of the Power Platform, I've included the starter kit. Okay. Now, what I would recommend is that for you, it's definitely something you should check out. And I'm going to move this over there, right? One of the tools in the starter kit is this fantastic tool that allows you to get visibility of all the apps and flows that have been built. Now, yes, there's some amazing Power BIs, but actually, this model-driven app is probably the most important tool you'll get in the kit. Let me explain why. The Power BI report, you can go into a fair amount of detail, but actually in this kit, there's a lot of data that you may not necessarily know about. Okay. And I'm going to give you a quick peek of what that looks like. So just as an example, I can see the number of apps, the number of automations. I can go and check out my makers, et cetera, et cetera. But actually, what's really key is the fact that I can see way more than that under the hood, right? And I'm going to give you a quick peek. So the starter kit is the starting point for me. You can get the starter kit directly by going to the Microsoft website, simply typing in the Center of Excellence starter kit, and it'll give it to you, and you can just install that yourselves, right? But the reason I love the kit is because it allows me to do this thing. And it's one of the key things I do with every organization I work with, and it's called a connector review. Okay. And I'm going to bring up a live one that I did. So a connector review allows me to go through the organization and take a look at all the connectors that are being used. Then I can actually go and see what connectors are flagged as what we would call red, amber, green, right? So we tag these ourselves, and then I can actually go and see what is available. So I've built this ourselves. We've built this ourselves. I can go and see what connectors are important and what are not important, all right? But I can also see what connectors are causing trouble. Okay. So as an example, if I select the red connector there, you can see that these are all the ones we flagged as red because they are potentially a risk to the organization. Okay. Now, how did I get this data? Well, let me show you. This is a little bit of magic, right? The way that I got this data is not by using the standard functionality in the kit. If you go to search, right, and you say search rows and tables using advanced find, and you type in connect, okay, let's get rid of the pretext, you can see that you've got connection references. Okay, cool. So I'll go ahead and select that and click continue. And it actually gives me a full list. This is in my tenant itself, a full list of connection references that have been made across the ecosystem. So if I hit apply, here's everything that's been created. Now, you'll notice that there's an app. What they've done here is a little bit strange, but the data model just takes some getting used to. What they've done is they've actually moved apps and flows into one record, but they've kind of flagged them differently. So the record could be an app or a flow, depending. Sorry, I've opened that incorrectly. Yeah, could be an app or an automation. So if you went ahead and you went sort apps by Z2A, you get all the applications over there that are using these connectors. This is super cool, right? Because actually it gives me a lot of opportunity to see what's happening, but I can take it a little bit further. I can actually go ahead and say add columns. And what we're going to do is we're going to pick out our, whoops, let's go to, sorry, we're going to go to, apologies, I've broken it again. My bad. Let me just give me a second. Okay, we can go ahead, add columns, and actually pick other pieces of information that are directly from the list. Now, here's what's cool. I can go ahead and look at related records. So I can go and say, hey, go and find all the flow, the pieces of flow or the flow information. So I'm just going to search by status. All right, and I can see, select the flow status. I can also find flows that are paused, flows that are not paused, et cetera, directly through this list. Now, you can do some of this in the Center of Excellence Power BI, but I've actually found that I've got a lot more control over the data over here. So if I just go close and apply, you'll actually start seeing that if I go and search by flow connection reference, Z2A, I can get a ton more data out of here, like loads and loads. And this is the very, very minimalist version. I can get loads more if you just dig around in the Center of Excellence starter kit and look for things that make sense. Okay, so I thought that was pretty cool. So doing my connection review, I can go back and look at data policies and say, actually, guys, these are the things we should block. These are the things we should not block, and this is why. All right. So I actually have data behind my process. The next thing is solution sizing. This is key. Okay. So the what are people building? Now, the what are people building is really important here because I think that a lot of the time people think Power Platform is for building basic things. Okay, and that's just not the truth, right? Like everything about Dynamics 365 field service or customer service, those are just like giant power apps, right? Like that's what they are. Okay, so if you think about that, organizations actually run a lot of their business on the Power Platform. That's quite a big deal. Here's something else to consider. Did you know that there are organizations out there? I think the most I've seen is 100,000 plus automations living across the estate. So you can quite safely say that a lot of these tools are actually extremely important when running businesses. All right. So don't think for a second that just building a minimalist app on a SharePoint list is the way that Power Platform is built. It's actually not. In fact, it's built for enterprise grade solutions. And I'll battle anyone that says differently because I've built them, I've productionized them, and they work extremely well, hopefully still. Right. Now, what I do is I size solutions. Now, this is the best average that I can give you around solution sizing. And what it effectively means, this is my version, is that when I build a solution, I categorize it. So I'm like, okay, the thing that I'm building has got like anonymized data. It's going to have some reporting. The criticality is not high. So I pick like a grading of things across my table. And then I'm like, you know what? This aggregates out to a small. Therefore, I don't need to build it as an IT person. I can go ahead and get a business maker to build that, which is really useful. Okay. The one thing that's important though is that when I go through this process, it's key to know that this is my version. Okay. The key thing here is that because it's my version, you're going to want to change this for you and your organization. So not everything is going to map here. Like one of the orgs we're working for at the moment, they only have 3 or 4 of these categories in there because the rest of this doesn't matter to them. Okay. So that's important, right? The next thing I want to talk about is everyone's favorite topic in the world, and that is environment strategies. So I've spoken about what people are building, but what about where people are building? And I again think that we dilute this a lot, right? Because a lot of folks think that an environment strategy talks about dev, test, and prod. And I'm like, well, why? Like, does it really? Is that actually what an environment strategy is? I mean, I have like, I don't know, in one tenants, I had over 100 environments in personal tenants, and then in productionized tenants, I've seen thousands. Okay, so please don't think that Please don't think that your environment strategy is just going to be 3 environments talking about how to move a solution between them. It's way more complicated than that. In fact, I've worked in organizations that work in pretty much every country in the world and have all sorts of layers of environment strategies on there because of the data localization and things like that. So I want to show you this slide because this is a real one we put in for an organization. Okay. And they have their default environments and they don't want to turn that off. They don't want to block it. They don't want to go ahead and do something crazy like make it managed. Haha. What they want to do is they actually want people to test it out and be a sandbox. But then what they do is they notify those people within 10 days that that solution that they built needs to either be moved or deleted. And they do actually delete it, right? Which is pretty wild. But what we did is we said, okay, how do we do this, right? So we built a environment strategy that talks to dynamics, that talks to um, other areas of the business. But this was a university with around 25,000 people in the uni. And the departments change all the time. So I can speak to that because I actually study planetary sciences at the University of Birkbeck. So I study like astrobiology and that type of thing. And the departments are changing all the time. So how can you have an environment strategy that maps to departmental changes? And you can't be like, this is my HR environment. And then 2 days later, HR splits out into like people management and talent. Okay. So you've got to think about how you manage a relatively dynamic environment structure. And the way that we did it was we actually made it data driven. We didn't make it departmental. So we said, cool, these are going to be data groups. So data group A, you're going to deal with this type of data. Data group B, you're going to deal with this type of data. And then we put them in tiers of three. I've had a 10-tier environment strategy where I've had like mini dev environments at the bottom. Then I've had build, then dev, and then pre-prod, and then there's just layers and layers, right? So it's important to try and not overcomplicate this, obviously depending on your organization's needs. So this is an example, and remember, as an admin, the more environments you have, the more people you need to help you manage these, especially when you're really stringent on things like DLP. Okay, data loss prevention is extremely important. And if that gets messy, then you have more environments to track and manage across that data loss prevention. All right. So getting your environment strategy right up front is extremely important. Okay. So my next one is targeted data policies. Now, these are really important because I've talked to you about global data policies, but actually targeted data policies are a little different. And I'll show you why. Okay. So a targeted data policy does not speak to the across the environment, right? Like you have to get your environment strategy done first. And then what you can go ahead and do is go ahead and build a targeted data policy. So you can see here, right? I've got that break automations data policy. I'm going to go ahead and delete that, right? And what I'll do is I'll go back and hopefully we can re-enable our friend again. I'm not so sure it'll let me, but just give me a moment. Let's go to our flow. Hopefully it'll sync up. Just give me a sec. Let's hope it does. And we will go ahead and we will turn it on. Nope, still a little bit mad at me for creating that data policy. It does take a few minutes to sort its life out. Okay. But remember, there we go. Add to Google Drive. Okay, cool. So I've turned it back on. So now it's super happy. It's like, Chris, thank you so much for helping me do that. You can make targeted data policies where you can say new policy. We'll call this targeted data policy. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select pre-built connectors once again. We'll select everything that can be blockable. Whack. Select the whole bunch and say block, except what I'm going to do is go to blocked and select Google. Yep. Google Sheets, and we will move that to non-business. We'll go to non-business, clear all the filters when it lets me do it. Why are you not letting me do it? We want all of them. Well, bam, cool. Okie dokes, clear all of them. I'm just going to move them to business. I'm a little bit pedantic. You could probably just leave them in non-business, but you know, me and my ridiculousness. Right, the scope, I'm going to add multiple environments, and I'm going to go ahead and select feature trial. Okay, cool. And I'm going to go add that to the policy, click next, and say create policy. All right, so you can see that as a specific environment that I've added in there. Okay, it is specific to the environments. When I go back and I go and check out my automations, so let's go back, click on flows, go back in there. Took a couple of minutes, right? But it should be okay because I've allowed that Google Sheets, but this only allows it for that environment, right? It's not going to allow it for other environments, which is pretty important. So I can be super targeted at how I manage those data policies. Very, very important. So I don't have to make one global policy and just say, hey, everyone, you're all screwed. You're not allowed to build anything. I can be extremely targeted in how I manage those data policies. All right. So think about your global policy as the one that kind of manages everything. And then your micro policies are the ones that you can kind of do exceptions. If you have a nested policy, so if you have a connector blocked in the global environments, and then you include that environment in one that unblocks the connector, all connectors are guilty until proven innocent. It will block that connector. Okay. Super duper important. So last couple. I love talking about this, maker archetypes. People are like, hey man, what are you talking about? That sounds really, really strange. I'm like, well, it is a little strange, but it's important because it helps you define your Power Platform maker journey. And a maker archetype, I break down into various layers. So Microsoft called them citizen devs. Okay. I do not like the term. I think it takes away from both citizens and devs. So we used our own versions, right? So we call them makers. And you can actually see it behind me. I've got the word maker built in Lego. Hopefully that's showing. But what effectively we do is break them up into types of people that will be interacting with the platform. So general users who are typically going to be accessing production environments, okay, maybe testing environments. We have intermediate makers who will be accessing environments where you can only build medium applications. Advanced makers, those are pro devs, so they'll be accessing anything where you can build whatever you want. Then you'll have your environment admins who will be doing the very kind of admin type stuff. They'll probably have access to most things. You'll have your COE administrator, who is the person that's going to be making sure the center of excellence starter kit behaves itself. And finally, your testers, all right? And your testers are the people that are going to be of user category, but testing things. I took out one of the maker types here and I called it a beginner maker. And a beginner maker is the one that is only allowed to build extra small and small solutions. And typically, I don't actually mind if they build those in the default. I don't at all. In fact, cool, I encourage it, right? Because I've got rules around my default environment. I've got actual structure and governance, which helps me map that environment. Okay. So it's pretty important for me to make sure that I can classify my makers. And the reason I do that is because when I know who is building things, where they're building things and what they're building, I can be way more detailed about how I define that maker journey and how I get them building along the right pathway and how I educate and train them. Okay. Super important. So the second last one is ALM. One of the most contentious things in the Power Platform, okay, and I'll tell you why. People think ALM is people think ALM is about moving solutions between environments. Okay. I'm going to say something that might upset people. And what I want to say is that I actually don't think everything needs ALM. I actually think that most things don't actually need to be moved between environments. And let me do the dumbest demo in the world for you. Okay. So this is I'm going to make an Excel spreadsheet and tell me if any of you do this. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to make a folder for my Excel spreadsheet called dev. I'm going to make another folder for my Excel spreadsheet and I'm going to call this, I'm going to go ahead and call this test. Then make another folder for my Excel spreadsheet and then I'm going to call this production prod. And once I've done that, I will go ahead and make my Excel spreadsheet in dev. So we'll say new spreadsheet, spread. There we go, new spreadsheets. And then once I've done my spreadsheet and I've finished adding it, do I make a copy? And then do I go back and then do I move it into test? And then do I invite all my other people in my organization to test the spreadsheet? I do not think a single one of you do this on this call. Okay. I generally don't. I really don't think that every single person on this call has got 3 folders where they move their Excel files from dev to test to prod. It's really, really, really like not going to happen. Okay. So why do we do it with Power Apps? Like, why are we so convinced that every Power App that we make needs to be moved from dev to test to prod? Can't we just build a Power App or an automation in an environment and just leave it there? I mean, it's not always permanence. And actually, if the thing really matters, you can move it up into a more specific set of environments. But like, why do we do that? What is it that says to us that we have to put everything in dev, test, and prod? So what I want to do is I want to help you. Okay, stop doing this. Genuinely, guys, you're wasting a lot of time, right? Like, just think about it. If it's a medium solution, sure, go ahead and move it into a specific environment. But if it's not, why? Why are we doing that? Okay. So you can follow all the ALM rules you want. And I'm down to clown 100%, like follow all of the ALM processes that you want. But actually, I think that if you've built your governance in correctly and you've protected your data estate correctly with the right data loss prevention, I don't think you need to go crazy there. I think that only big solutions need to be moved between 16 different environments and a partridge in a pear tree. All right. So the last point I want to make is the maker journey. And this is kind of where you're taking your who is building, what are they building, and where are they building, and you roll this up into this kind of journey that you can take people on. Now, I'm going to apologize up front for the next slide that you're going to see because the text is tiny. I sent the decks over, so hopefully you'll be able to get this and use this in your business. And this is a very generic maker journey that I kind of came up with, but I want to give a friend of mine a shout out before I show this because he inspired this, and his name is Catalan. I can't mention the name of the company he's from, but Catalan and I worked together probably about 4 years ago, and he built a very similar concept. And I'm like, dude, this is awesome. Okay, so this is not plagiarism. Don't worry, I've come up with my own thing, but I really wanted to give him a shout out because actually he inspired the whole concept of this for me in my brain. So a maker journey talks about how you get makers to build in the platform. Now, yes, you need a comms plan. Yes, you need training materials, but actually, what does this look like, right? So, beginner makers are always going to start out by discovering the platform. Where do they go to discover it? Do they go to a SharePoint site? Do they go to Teams? Do you send them a carrier pigeon? How does it work? Okay. Then they explore the platform. Like, what are they doing? Are they going to get information from a centralized application where they can see all the things that have been built? Are they videos? Are they cat emojis? Like, how do they explore the platform? And then typically as they grow, they become intermediate once they've experimented, right? And then they go through this learning journey where they start picking up way more data and way more information, right? And maybe that's where they start thinking, you know what, we're going to start building things. Like we're going to start building real things in the platform. And actually, they might go through the process of assessing that solution. So we actually built an assessment solution that tells you the size of the thing you're building. It's extremely intelligent and uses what I call 8-bit math, but it actually works out the solution size, and it is a paid-for asset. I'm sorry, but it took lots of time. And then what happens is that you move down a specific pathway. So you can see for extra smalls and smalls over here, I actually don't need to go through a massive process of deployments in ALM because it's not a thing that needs to be productionized. It just lives in default or another team productivity environment. But then as you move up to the medium and large scale, you start seeing that there's more process that's involved. Okay. And actually, what I've started to find is that the more process that's involved, the more people you need. So the maker journey for me is a really great way of saying who is building things. You can see beginner, intermediate, professional, advanced. What are they building? Which is the t-shirt size, and then where are they building is the environment structure. I'll say something else. If you build an extra small or small in my tenant, you support it. It's not up to me. Okay. I'm IT. I've got much more things to worry about. Do I support every Excel spreadsheet and Word document that gets created? Heck no. The reason is because I just don't have time. Like you're all lovely people who understand Microsoft Word and Office. This is your problem. Okay. Also, I'm really not going to try and figure out your macro. Absolutely not. But it's important that the people that build it support it. But once you start moving to the extra large and large scale, actually IT needs to be involved and IT need to really start managing this process. Okay. And also, when you start thinking about mediums, you may have what you call a co-build process or a fusion team, which Microsoft loves to call it. I like the name, actually. I think it's very cool. But you could have multiple people building things as a medium, so like people that are closest to the problem, and then IT techs. Okay, so this is my version of a maker journey. I would encourage you to build your own, right? Like, or use this, whatever, screenshot it, I don't know, do whatever you like. But if it makes sense to you, please try it because I found my customers love this. And if you're a customer, hopefully this makes sense to you. Okay. And then finally, my favorite thing is the people, and the people are the most important. And typically, when I go in and start working with a Power Platform team in my maker journey, I typically find Microsoft 365 admins and security people. In fact, security people find me because I'm normally doing data breaches. So, yeah, that's how I roll. Anyway, when you scale out, right, you may want to break this up into two. So you have your platform ecosystem, which is the actual physical platform, like apps and automations as a collective noun. They call a collective group of starfish a galaxy. I haven't figured out a collective noun for a set of apps, but it'll be something cool like a digity or something. Anyway, so you have your ecosystem, and that's the things that have been built. And then your portfolio are the physical assets, like the apps, like the flows. Okay. Now, the full ecosystem is supported typically by IT. Your physical assets are not supported always by IT. They may be supported by the makers. And then you'll grow your team. By the way, these little blobs are not representative of people, they're representative of roles. So you could have one person fulfilling all of this in the beginning, and then hopefully you pay them lots of money and grow the platform and they get a larger team. Okay. But then as you go, you start adding in things like adoption and your business analysts. And typically, these are the people that will be managing your Power Platform estate. Now, I 100% agree with what's going on in your brain. You're like, Chris, these roles don't exist in my business. To quote the mighty Anchorman, 60% of the time, I can be right every time. Okay. So these are like the generic type of roles that I found, but yeah, you can rebrand them. And if you want to see more around the racy that lives underneath this, you'll need to send me a box of chocolates, a carrier pigeon, and hit me up on LinkedIn. Okay. But it's pretty important that these roles kind of exist within your platform estates and you can build on that as you go. Um, so the other thing I just want to bring up is that I feel like it doesn't matter how many things people build. We're so focused on, oh no, we have 5,000 apps. It actually doesn't matter to me as long as people respect the data. Okay. And that's something that I've always wanted to get across very early on the Power Platform is that we've never really cared how many Excel documents people make. Nobody limits you on like emails that you send. They don't go, okay, Bob, you sent 18 emails today. That's not okay, right? Like no one does that. Nobody blocks you from sending as many Teams messages as you want. Nobody blocks you on making Excel documents. So why are we so fixated on doing this with apps? And the reason is because we're scared. All right. We don't understand what's under the platform. We don't understand how to protect data. And even though this came out in 2015, like nearly 10 years later, we're still battling the data debates. We're still battling with data. Let me tell you something. If you think Power Platform is going to scare you from a data perspective, AI is going to do it tenfold. All right. AI is a loud hailer for terrible data. So get your Power Platform estate right before you do AI. That's all I'm saying. So the last couple of things I just want to leave you with, and I'd end with a couple of things, right, that I've mentioned. The first thing is understand where you are in your low code and now AI journey, because low code people, whether you like it or not, you are going to be the harbingers of AI, right? You're going to be the people that end up doing a lot of the AI work. And the reason I say that is because your skill set lends itself best to doing artificial intelligence. So when you start thinking about the agentification of artificial intelligence, that, my friends, is Connectors and Power Automate bolted on to generative AI. I don't know if you knew that, but congratulations, you are now AI people. Put that on your CV, add it to LinkedIn. I did it 2 weeks ago. I'm now director of AI, whatever that means. But it's pretty sick, right? Because now, as a Power Platform person, because I've got a wide view of the estate of what's going on in my business, I understand data, I understand security, I understand connectors, I understand how to build things. I now understand AI a lot more deeply, which is really cool. So figure out where you are in your journey. And again, if you think you have not got Power Platform in your business, you are wrong, categorically, right? A lot of people are like, oh, we've turned off the platform. I'm like, do show me. I'm extremely excited to see this. And they do show me, and we do find things. So remember, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Okay. The second point I want to bring up is guardrails first. Get them data policies in, go and get those environments in, go and do a connector review, see what has been used in the platform. It is very important for you to understand the connectors, right? Me, I don't actually care how many apps there are. Okay. What I care about is that what connections are being used. All right. And then lastly, I want to talk about finding your purpose. Okay. This is dare to do. All right. Please do something with the platform. Please go ahead and actually go and build things, because I can tell you what, I've had a wonderful time being creative, and I've had a massively wonderful time creating solutions that solve my business problems. So again, folks, like I definitely think that you should start thinking about how to get going with this if you haven't. And if you have gotten going with it, please go and recheck your security, and please go and recheck your governance. I cannot iterate it enough. It will help you so much in the later on with AI. So again, if you want to hit me up, just do it on LinkedIn or Twitter or carrier pigeons, whatever you want. But a massive thanks to the DynamicsCon team and to the audience. Now, first of all, I always say to people, it is important to show up, which you have, and be part of these events. So thank you for coming. But to the organizers of this, you do a great job every year. So a massive thank you to you, because I know how much hard work goes into this. So yeah, I want to wrap it up there. Thanks to the green room folks and everything. And yeah, if anyone wants to have a chat, hit me up. I'd be glad to talk. Hopefully see you soon.